welcome into Surviving Paradise, the podcast that takes a sometimes serious, oftentimes humorous look at the claim by the leadership of Jehovah's Witnesses, the Heavens 11, that we are all living in a modern-day spiritual paradise hosted by them. I'm your host here, Stacy Bauman, former elder, ministerial servant, and a kid raised as a witness in the 70s and 80s. As I do like to issue a warning, we try to have some fun here while we heal. Each episode has sarcasm, humor, oftentimes can get very serious and have tears. Please note, nothing here is ever meant to offend. Just one guy's take on the entire holy experience. We often focus on things such as irony, ignorance, deception, and more on this show in what I would call as our weekly review of Paradise, right? But I may have just stumbled onto an entirely new level of stupidity from the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm done with giving men permission to grow hair on certain parts of their body. Nah, probably not. I'll say it again. I'm done with giving adult women permission to wear pants. If you don't see the irony or the disturbing things in those two things, not much I can do to help you. I'm done talking about Jesus being Australian, as we recently learned at the convention in his nifty movie. I'll probably come back to that one at some point too, let's be honest. I'd like to show you this week something that exposes the men behind Jehovah's organization. This past week or so, the only website powered by Holy Spirit featured an article that immediately got my attention. Not because it's well written or even information an intelligent adult or parent even needs to consider, but nonetheless, there it was. The article, by the way, is still there at the time of this recording. Feel free to go look at it. I encourage that. You might be wondering what's its title? Well, I hope you're sitting down. The article is titled, "Help Your Children Deal with Disturbing News Reports." I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess you know where this is going. I want to say this right now. We all have a very serious responsibility to protect children. Period. Hard stop. We're the adults. They're the little people. They deserve our protection. But folks, I really debated laughing to myself and passing over this article, but in the end I decided not to. Not because I love talking about this, but because we all should take every opportunity to jump on anything and everything this organization says and does to children. Where does one begin when it comes to Jehovah's Witnesses and children? The list of life-altering problems and very real dangers for kids inside Jehovah's Witnesses is very long, and I do mean very long. It can start with what many consider the mundane. How about the endless messaging that chips away at their sense of self and their very self-esteem? Consider one such example if you're wondering what I'm talking about, and it has to be one of my all-time favorites because, to be very open, it impacted my childhood. And frankly, this type of reasoning for kids was devastating for us as kids. It comes to us from the original School and Jehovah's Witnesses brochure, page 23. Still accessible on the website as spiritual food for Jehovah's Witnesses. It says there on page 23, quote, under the heading, I should say, cheerleader and homecoming queen. I know, immediately your mind goes to, well, I don't remember Jesus commenting on the homecoming queen there in Jerusalem. I get it, I know, but the governing body did. Under the subheading cheerleader and homecoming queen, we're told, quote, at athletic events, it is the responsibility of cheerleaders to orchestrate the crowd in frenzied cheering for a school, not to be confused with Jesus riding in on a donkey and palm leaves waving, okay? Back to the quote, they also encourage the people into hero worship and lead them in standing for the school song. Jehovah's Witnesses consider it inappropriate to do this. Similarly, we feel that for a witness youth to serve as a homecoming or beauty queen would be in violation of Bible principles that show the impropriety of glorifying humans. End quote. Yeah. Spiritual food meant for kids, my generation, from the school brochure, page 23. Unbelievable. You see, cheerleaders are even the tools of demons. Idolatry runs rampant at the Friday night lights, the football games. How dare you sing your school song? You need to be singing about book carts, just like the singing book cart does. Homecoming queen? Forget about it. Jehovah gets jealous after all, and you need a shepherding call to review the 10 Commandments again. Check number 2 and 3. Absolute insanity. And this was the counsel that was being handed out to parents and children of Jehovah's Witnesses. They drip-fed this stuff to us as kids. And for those of us old enough to remember, we can tell you, and I hope I'm not speaking for everyone, I won't try to, I can tell you, it harmed kids. It harmed their self-esteem. It made them weirdos at school. It was deeply damaging. Cheerleaders and homecoming queens were the tools of Satan. But what a child faces in this organization only ramps up from there. Exposure to biblical fables they claim are real history, the lack of a social life, the inability to date, uncertain about their future, the pressures to get baptized, young marriages, and the most heinous child safety issues that you can see by just accessing Google. Each potential danger is a subject unto itself, and yes, it's not lost to me that I'm saying out loud that there is a long list of dangers to children inside a religion that claims to represent Jesus of the Bible. How is it possible when they claim to be living in a spiritual paradise? Why would a child inside Jehovah's Witnesses ever be uncomfortable or scared of anything? Why would they need to be shielded from, as this article this week says, disturbing news? After all, consider this. The Watchtower of October 1st, 1999, page 8, paragraph 13 tells us, quote, "Of course, the fact that Jehovah's servants weep over the sorry state of world affairs does not preclude their being happy. On the contrary, they are actually the happiest group of people on earth." End quote. Yes, Jehovah's Witnesses are so happy. In fact, they're the happiest people on the planet, and that includes their kids. Why would a child worry about anything when they live inside the happiest organization in the universe? And that question only carries more weight when you consider that this organization is supposed to provide everything a Jehovah's Witness needs for protection. And when the governing body is talking about protection, here it is. There's one example that stands above the rest. Yeah, my guy, say it with me, Noah. From the Watchtower of October 15th, 1950, page 382, on all things protection, the governing body said this, quote, "The ark served as a place of protection for Noah, his family, and the animals he took therein." What did it picture? God's provision for protecting his people at the present time from the catastrophe, the battle of Armageddon. And what is that provision? It is God's organization, and it will serve as the place of protection from the expression of God's wrath against his enemies, even as did the ark for Noah and his family. End Quote, the ark. The organization is like the ark. Even as Noah and his family were shoveling piles of mixed animal poo out the one window in that ark, little did they know what it all symbolized. You and I going to the Kingdom Hall each week, even as kids. Just like the article I'm about to dive into, protection is one of the many benefits a child can expect by associating with Jehovah's Witnesses. They can expect to be protected. And it's no ordinary protection either. One more experience to show the kind of protection a Jehovah's Witness, especially children, can expect. From the June 1st, 1995 Watchtower, page 25, here comes one of those experiences that really impacted our lives. It says, quote, on one occasion, Rita and I were with a group engaged in house-to-house preaching work in another section of New York City. Turning a corner, we noticed some people lined up in front of a hole in the wall of an abandoned building. As we took a few strides up the street, we noted a young fellow standing on the sidewalk looking at us. There was another on the far corner looking out for police cars. We had walked into the middle of a drug operation. The first lookout was startled, but then he saw the Watchtower magazine and was relieved. After all, I could have been a police officer. He then called out in Spanish, "The Watchtowers! The Watchtowers!" They knew who we were, identifying us with the magazine, and everything was all right. As I passed close to him, I said, "Good morning. How are you?" He replied by asking me to pray for him. End quote. Yes. Protection inside the Ark, God's organization. You see, the Watchtower magazine protects people from drug dealers and flying bullets, needles, and more. Nothing scares a drug lord like the Watchtower magazine. Maybe this is why no one approaches their book carts. They see the magazines and books and they just shudder in fear. I don't know. Maybe they could start handing out watchtowers at drug rehabilitation centers. I'm going to stop. It's something else. But the key point is that the organization, the governing body, even a Watchtower magazine, all those little pages would protect everyone associated with them from everything, even drug lords doing a drug heist. And that would include kids. I've briefly mentioned a long list of dangers to kids, but let's focus just on this article from the website this week. With all of the insanity I just mentioned, consider one such example of how they claim to protect children and fail miserably. This article is embarrassing. As usual, it puts their lack of self-awareness on full display to the world. So back to this week's website feast. The article again was titled, "Help Your Children Deal with Disturbing News Reports." The article begins in typical simple fashion. Someone has clearly caught on to the latest trends in online marketing. Everything is a bullet point now, or a snippet, a headline meant to grab a person's attention, with the goal being that the governing body are the authorities on how to protect children, even from bad news. It begins this article with the following, quote, "Nerve-wracking news, often accompanied by graphic video footage." Pay special attention to that comment. Is available 24/7 on TVs, phones, tablets, and computers. And children are watching. How can you keep your children from becoming overwhelmed by disturbing news reports? How are children affected by the news? How can you help your children deal with news anxiety? What if your child has witnessed a tragic event? End quote. First of all, from the outset, this is true. Okay, kudos. We live in times where kids are exposed to stuff that we weren't as kids, not my generation. It's far too accessible. In fact, according to a study from Grow Therapy, we learn this, quote, according to a survey of 266 therapists conducted by Grow Therapy, almost all those who were polled, 99.6% of the therapists, said that the news consumption can have a negative impact on mental health on some level. While staying informed is important, there's clearly a growing concern about the effects that the news may have on people's well-being. Constant exposure to distressing news can trigger anxiety, stress, and even depression, activating the body's fight or flight response. Signs that news is affecting mental health include excessive worrying, restlessness, irritability, difficulty sleeping, and feelings of hopelessness. Watching TV news may be more emotionally intense due to graphic visuals, while reading news online can lead to endless doom scrolling. End quote. Yeah. Enough said. I feel for kids today. Endless bad news, destruction, violence, fear, and more. It's very bad for all of us, but especially for kids. Well said by the happiest guys on earth in this article. They're right. It's all true. Showing kids endless graphic imagery and things of violence and all sorts of other stuff isn't good for them. And this stuff is hitting us in the face on the regular, especially in social media. YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, whatever, all of it. It's really, really bad for all of us, folks. But it's especially bad for children and their developing brains. From healthychildren.org, we're told, quote, research shows that viewing or playing violent content could have an effect on children. This applies to both real and fictional violence that they might see on a screen. Violence that children absorb through TV, social media, movies, games, and conventions of Jehovah's Witnesses. No, it doesn't say that. And other entertainment can raise their levels of fear, anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues. End quote. What a tragedy. How awful this is for kids. So, okay, the governing body is serving up some facts in this article. Viewing endless violence, fear, fearful messaging, doom, destruction, and more impacts kids in a bad, bad way. They seem concerned, at least in paragraph 1 here. How can Jehovah's Witnesses protect their kids from images of violence, death, destruction, and other bad news? Well, I'm here to say they could start by leaving Jehovah's Witnesses. Start right there. Okay, podcast is over. Nah, we'll keep going, but that's it. I'm not naive. I know that the advent of social media, smartphones, all the technology has exposed kids to bad news with the touch of a finger on a screen. It's ridiculously accessible now, and it's terrifying. Everything is in the palm of their hand. In the 70s and 80s, Jehovah's Witnesses were told they couldn't even watch R-rated movies. Remember that one, folks? You'd be removed as an elder. You'd have a judicial committee if you watched an R-rated movie. And that is child's play compared to what our kids have on their phones today. And it breaks my heart, makes me sick. I'm on a soapbox here, but it's true. However, where else would an innocent child be exposed to horrifying, violent news and messaging that scares the shit out of them? Did you say it out loud? Yeah. The Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses. The publications put in their hands by well-meaning, obedient Jehovah's Witness parents are something to behold. Who can relate? I can honestly say that the very first place I was exposed to things that scared me was inside Jehovah's Witnesses. My earliest childhood memories center around two books in particular that I've talked about on this show before. You remember the peach-colored From Paradise Lost to Paradise Regained. What a doozy. It was made in the late 50s and was available to us kids in the late 60s, early 70s, and it was my go-to during the boring meetings. The inside cover was perfect fodder for a young boy. As whoever the guy was on stage droned on about handing out Watchtowers on Saturday, I had no time for that as a little boy. I was engrossed in the visuals they gave me in their book. You see, the very organization that is featuring an article about protecting kids from bad news, death, and mayhem this month was the same organization designing, drawing, and printing out illustrations that scared the hell out of me. Chapter 4 of this peach-colored bomber had two illustrations of people drowning alongside dead bodies as my guy Noah sailed away in the distance in his ark. I think I'll share some of these images, by the way, on the YouTube tile for the show if interested, if you don't remember them. Page 52 had an illustration that freaked me out as a kid. Abraham, inches from plunging a dagger into Isaac's heart. And I'll tell you, this version of Isaac, he's just a little guy. He's just a little guy. He looks young. Chapter 8 had that illustration of a guy bleeding out with an arrow in his heart. Who can forget that one? All the arrows flying through the air, an arrow plunged into this guy's chest. He's bleeding out, trying to pull it out. Also in chapter 8, we have the priest putting a little baby into a fire with a bull-headed Baal god looking on. We got Jezebel screaming as men push her out a window. That was one of my favorites. The dogs down below waiting to eat her. But chapter 25 featured the illustrations that literally kept me up at night. I'm sure it was just great for my mental health, somewhere between the ages of 1 and 10. And make no mistake, God's happiest organization was printing this stuff for kids. You remember the chapter 25? It's kind of famous. It shows Armageddon, including little kids running for their lives with mom and dad running. And of course, the little girl reaching for her doll alongside her family puppy as Jehovah sent her down into the crevasse of an earthquake. If you know, you know. I'm going to put it on the tile if you'd like to see it. It's burned on my generation's child's brains that are now adults. It's burned on it. There are so many more, some of which I'll share again on the social media sites for the show. And then, of course, this same organization tasked with protecting children from violent, disturbing news this month pumped out the My Book of Horror Stories in 1978. That was my second book, with my favorite shots being Jael, the judge, the priest, the female judge. Remember her? Jael, hammering a tent pin into Sisera's head with blood oozing out. And then, of course, the famous shot of Solomon hanging a baby upside down, getting ready to cut it in half. These were great images. No disturbing news here. And I can hear the naysayers now. Well, come on now. Stacy, that was the 70s. That was the 70s and 80s. That was then, this is now. Well, I'm here for this because it's not true at all. In 2025, the same organization telling us to shield our kids from disturbing news and images this week on their website is the same organization that is now pumping out violent movies at their conventions. We didn't have those when we were kids. But all the while, children of Jehovah's Witnesses sit in the audience watching this stuff in full HD now on big screens. They're claiming this week they want to shield kids from disturbing news, but not the fact that their God Jehovah has a long history of doing very or allowing very disturbing things to happen to people. And then, as if that isn't enough in a book, they've decided to recreate the disturbing things in high-def movies and surround sound so kids know exactly what it looked like when 185,000 Assyrians were slaughtered in the middle of the night. What did that look like? Since 2014, the same organization claiming they want to protect kids from disturbing news has been producing movies that overtly feature violence, war, death, weapons, persecution, secret door knocks, and scared and terrified children in the movie. A few of my favorites for the apologists claiming that the governing body doesn't create death and mayhem for kids to look at anymore. How about a few examples? How about the 2016 movie entitled "Oh Jehovah, I Trust in You"? It featured a look at King Hezekiah of the Bible, and it's still on the website today. You remember the final shots, a CGI angel, where'd they get the money for that, appears in the heavens, shoots some fiery balls, special effects, and the audience, including kids watching on, is treated to the images of dead bodies everywhere. Not just at the distance, but up close, including dead corpses piled on top of each other with their eyes open. Nothing creepy there for a little kid. We see King Sennacherib and his woman crying, walking among the slaughtered bodies, with him screaming up into the sky, "Jehovah! Jehovah!" I didn't have the heart to tell him the name Jehovah wasn't invented until the 13th century by a Catholic monk, but apparently Assyrian King Sennacherib knew it. Pay no attention to the details. Just look at all those slaughtered dead people. All courtesy of Jehovah, little guy. The same guy you pray to at night to deal with the bully at school. The music swells with a note to the audience about Sennacherib later being assassinated. The good news just continues. Somewhere I couldn't help but think the folks from Sesame Street realize they really need to up their game. They're really being too passive in their messaging to kids. But not to be outdone, there was the 2016 Remain Loyal to Jehovah summer convention featuring Jehovah's Witnesses, including little kids, hiding in a basement as the Great Tribulation is hitting the planet. Some Jehovah's Witnesses come and go with secret door knocks, little kids watching on wondering, do I get the door knock code? No one even hands them a bowl of Lucky Charms. Included are shots of families studying the literature with little kids, preparing them for the scary time, coming any second now, that they too will hide out in Brother Smith's basement, but only if you have a secret knock. But some won't even show up, as they're told in this movie. That's covered too. And those guys, they're named, they get killed with everyone else outside the basement. Better get baptized, little 10-year-old watching on. You want to be in the basement. Then you get the secret door knock. The video ends by showing soldiers busting into the house upstairs and shows these two little kids with glasses, a brother and a sister, looking up at the ceiling in fear as they hear the soldiers getting closer. Can you imagine the impact this has on kids at the convention? Think about this. The soldiers reach the basement door and they bust into the room, and kids in the audience are treated to a shot of the same two little kids, just like them, holding on in terror to their parents as the soldiers get closer. Imagine you're a kid in that audience. The ending of this same movie shows the soldiers closing in on Brother Bob, the token elder. He looks real mean, by the way, so does his wife, but more like a guy that knows a good sweater vest sale when he sees one. But get this, it ends there, leaving the children in the audience watching to wonder what happens to all the Jehovah's Witnesses in the basement. The governing body didn't see fit to say. Nothing scary there for a little kid watching. You're certainly protecting them from disturbing news, just like this article tells us to do. But if that isn't bad enough, this same convention then featured a video to kids too, showing the same group that was hiding in the basement, apparently in a shot in the future. They're now on the beach with a big table filled with fruit. It's time for the plant-based diet. They're in paradise now. Very telling that Brother Bob the Elder, the guy from the basement leading them all, he's no longer wearing glasses in the paradise shot because he don't need them no more. He's perfect now. That fruit-based diet gave him 20/20 vision again. But if you haven't seen this, go watch it. Do you notice anything? Do you notice anyone missing? Do you think anyone at the convention watching this movie in particular would notice that these are all the same people from the basement, but there's two people missing? It will take you seconds to realize that the two little kids, the ones wearing glasses from the basement, they are not at the beachside paradise table eating fruit. They're not there. Just the adults. And if you don't think that the kids in the audience at the convention notice that other kids that look like them are missing, think again. Kids look for kids. Imagine the message this sent to Jehovah's Witness children in 2016. I can hear it now. Wait, Mom, Dad, the kids didn't make it? Am I going to make it? Why didn't the kids get in paradise? They were in the basement. What happened? Did they make a mistake and eat a birthday cake? I'm scared, Mom. Did Jehovah kill the kids? Where are the two kids? There it is. But please, governing body, tell us again in this week's article how you don't want children exposed to disturbing news. These guys. Wow, thanks for this article warning us against exposing our children to disturbing news. So what are you saying again in this month's article? Same Jesus running this organization? Same governing body? Folks, I was looking at this stuff they provided to me. They gave it to me before my little feet could even touch the Kingdom Hall floor while sitting in a chair. I was little, and so are the current children of Jehovah's Witnesses. The difference is now they get full-scale, high-def movies to create the kind of lasting impression and fear of what they call disturbing news, and it's all from them. Before you think there aren't any parents with common sense inside Jehovah's Witnesses, think again. The same 11 guys pumping out this article about protecting kids are the very same guys that were receiving letters from Jehovah's Witness parents calling them on their hypocrisy. In the May 2020 JW broadcasting, the planet, and by extension the universe, was treated to governing body member Stephen Lett, who opens the episode by addressing Jehovah's Witness parents who have been writing letters into the governing body. The letters were complaining about the disturbing news that they were exposing their little children to at congregation meetings and conventions. No, I'm not kidding. Please go watch it. Parents were not happy. And the governing body says this, thank you, Stephen Lett, quote, "We very much appreciate the concern. We cannot ignore the message Jehovah saw fit to have preserved in his word. We don't feel comfortable watering down the inspired insight Jehovah has preserved for the benefit of true worshipers. However, as you've observed, we try to do so as tastefully as possible. Parents likewise need to give their children a realistic idea of what they may face in the future." End quote. Nothing disturbing there, Stephen. Nothing that will scare the hell out of a kid. The same group of guys writing an article on the website this week telling parents to shield their kids from disturbing news is the same group of guys claiming you should expose your children to what they feel is a realistic, that's his word not mine, genocide set to hit the planet any day now. A genocide that will kill everyone they know. These kids, according to Stephen Lett, need to know what it's going to look like. It's realistic. Not to be missed is the fact that the very guys telling parents to shut up about their violent videos are the same 11 guys, what a coincidence, that will ride alongside Jesus slaughtering the kids next door right in front of their eyes. Nothing motivates a child to do what you want like scaring the hell out of them. And don't think for a minute that the governing body doesn't know this. That's why they're making movies now. But carry on. Please do give us counsel. I shouldn't let my kid watch the evening news or go on Twitter. They're very concerned about your kid's mental health, or so they claim. Can you see? Can you see this? But it gets better. You shouldn't let your kids watch CNN or Fox News or whatever you have in your country. However, our violent videos made at our billion-dollar movie studio, well, they're okay. Apparently, Jehovah's Witness parents with common sense weren't having it. They didn't appreciate Stephen Lett's message in the May 2020 JW broadcast. They were a little upset. And I'll say it right here. It was probably parents close to my age, my generation, that grew up looking at the illustrations in their books of people getting slaughtered, burned with fire, and swallowed by earthquakes. Because apparently these parents weren't going to shut up about it. Just months later, in the December 2020 JW broadcast, 6 months after King Stephen Lett told them to pipe down, the infamous and now missing Tony Morris was back with more counsel. I'm not going to repeat the entire diatribe, but the king, formerly known as Tony, says, quote, "The concern expressed was that some scenes could have an effect on children who have been protected by all negative circumstances on TV, including daily news reports and catastrophes being faced by real people." End quote. Loved his wording. It's very clear that he is low-key telling people, shut up, this is reality, folks. It's unbelievable. Go watch it. And I thought, gee, Tony, is this why you got fired? Because in July 2025, there's an article on the website tonight stating to do that exact thing. Shield kids from disturbing news reports. But here you are saying you shouldn't. Good grief. They just can't get out of their own way. Which is a governing body? Except that this is reality. People get hit by catastrophes. You need to watch it. It's very important to understand. Or should we be shielding our little people from disturbing news reports? Well, it's what he said next that should have anyone concerned about this issue just shaking your head. Tony, in the December 2020 JW broadcast, gives examples of videos that parents have actually written in and named as being upset about. He says, quote, "The basement scene we just reviewed," yeah, that basement video, just mentioned it, "was one of our videos that produced such a reaction. Another was the depicting of the Bible account showing Jehovah's saving acts," we get it, Tony, "in the time of Hezekiah," end quote. Again, yes, the same video that I just mentioned showing piles of dead bodies, eyes open on the corpses, smoke on the bodies, daggers, crying women, and more. And then he shows the bloodbath scene again in the broadcast to make his point. Yeah, this is the one that upset you. We're going to show it to you again. He then says, quote, "Parents need to give their children a realistic idea of what we may face in the near future," end quote. Wait a minute. We're now being told to expose them to disturbing news? What? He goes on to say what Stephen Letts said. The videos are tasteful and sanitized. Seconds after showing dead bodies piled on top of each other, smoke ascending as Sennacherib grabs a dagger and contemplates doing himself in with it. What? Our kids should watch this? He then puts a cherry on top of this disaster by saying, quote, "Be assured, the governing body is not trying to scare anyone." Remember, these are parents angry about what they're showing their children. He says the governing body's not trying to scare anyone. Instead, we're trying to prepare everyone, end quote. Wow. And then, at the time of the recording of this silly show, in July 2025, they post the article, "Help your children deal with disturbing news reports." Got it, Tony. It all makes sense. And I'll say it again. If you want to protect your children from disturbing, deeply disturbing things, start by leaving Jehovah's Witnesses. Unless you give your child free rein over TV, social media, and more, they are going to be exposed to some of the most disturbing news weekly inside of this organization, all reasoned away as their version of bad news being okay. Because, well, dead bodies, knives, and people burning, that comes from Jehovah. The irony. The genocide every Jehovah's Witness is waiting for will be led by the very guys telling them to pipe down about having to watch their violent videos. It's unbelievable. Yeah, so back to this week's article. Despite their long history of ironically exposing children to disturbing news, this week's article and feast goes on to say the following, quote, "How are children affected by the news?" And as you might guess, there's bullet points. There's 3 of them. Here they are. "Many children are upset by tragedies they see on the news. Some children might not openly express their feelings, but a tragic news report may disturb them deeply. Their anxiety might be heightened if their parents are unduly anxious." End quote for a minute. I'm not going to waste any time showing why Jehovah's Witness parents might be unduly anxious. They live their entire lives in a crucible of fear, including that they might be killed any day now for not doing enough for the organization, or that they may have to shun their own children at some point who don't agree with them, and many, many other reasons. Bullet point 2, children may misinterpret what they see on the news. For example, some conclude that what they have seen will happen to their family, and young children who watch repeated video footage of a disturbing incident may think that it is occurring repeatedly, end quote. Who wants to tell them? Do you mean being exposed to repeated illustrations of angels that all look like a clone army slaughtering people with fire as featured in your publications? Do you mean showing them dead bodies piled up with smoke ascending, their eyes wide open from death? You mean stuff like that? Or reminding them that if they don't obey them or they go to a birthday party, they might be killed just like the people they see in the movie? Who wants to tell these guys? Bullet point 3. Children may have trouble putting the news in perspective. They may not realize that news agencies are businesses that profit from having a large audience. I'm not gonna do it. Therefore, a report may be sensationalized to keep the attention of anxious viewers. Gee, I know 11 guys. Do you mean like the Watchtower Society? The Ark, as you called it in one reference, the safety zone. They've been showing your literature and movies sensationalizing Armageddon and a mass slaughter for most of their lives. Jehovah's Witnesses have been exposed from this, if born in, from the time they're old enough to hold a book. You expose them to disturbing things constantly. But instead of addressing their participation in giving kids disturbing news, they have advice for parents on how to shield their children from harm. And of course, the Bible itself always holds the answer, right? It always does. Never once addressing the fact that the Bible itself, including the Old and the New Testament, both contain narratives, poems, and instructions which describe, encourage, command, condemn, reward, punish, and regulate violent actions by Jehovah himself, by his favorite individuals, by his groups, his governments, and nation states. Among the violent acts referred to are things like war, human sacrifice with knives and fire, animal sacrifice. Yeah, animals get killed. Puppies got drowned at the flood. Murder. I'm going to say it here for the watchdogs. They show and speak about grape. Lose the G. They show genocide and criminal punishment, people being sacrificed. But the governing body still has all the answers for your kids. The article continues, quote, "The question is, how can you help your children deal with news anxiety?" The first bullet point in this section of the article says this: limit their exposure to tragic news. Great idea. This does not mean that your children should be oblivious to what is happening in the world, but little good is accomplished when they watch or hear a disturbing news story related over and over. End quote. I'm guessing the old yearbooks were mothballed for a reason, huh? You go back and look at some of those read from the stage, many of them contain real-life experiences so horrific. The Holocaust, Malawi, Burundi, Rwanda. I'm not going to repeat them. All of this was available to kids. Each meeting, each publication, public talks, the special talk after the memorial that was always about Armageddon and how people are going to be bird food. All available to kids. It continues there in this bullet point by listing someone we don't know exists or not. She says, quote, "Sometimes we talk in detail about a news report, not realizing how overwhelming it is for our children who overhear us," quote, says Maria. It gives us a Bible principle. Worry is a heavy burden from Proverbs 12:25 of the Contemporary English Version. And I'm here to tell you it sure is. Do I need to list the worries of an everyday Jehovah's Witness? I don't need to, because the same organization that pumped out this article is telling them that they only get undeserved kindness, and they're only going to live through the stuff they show them in movies and publications if they obey the 11 of them. And that includes kids, little kids. Point number 2 goes on to say, listen patiently, respond emphatically. It is difficult for your child to talk about the event. Suggest that he draw a picture about it instead. What? Address your child's concerns using terms he will understand, but avoid discussing needless details about the event. And here comes another sister who says, quote, our daughter seems to feel better after we sit and listen to her. What doesn't help is telling her, this is the way things are now, and we have to get used to it, end quote, says Sahare. You mean like Toni Morris did in the December 2020 broadcast? Your kids need to see realistic future events, folks. Yeah, this is just the way it is, not according to Sahare. Toni Morris just said that you need to show them realistic images. And he told you to stop bitching about their violent movies. He also said they're just told these parents that we're just trying to prepare your kids with the disturbing news about Armageddon and what it's going to look like. But okay, Sahara, I'm glad that your family gets to sit down and talk about it. And in fact, what encouragement. Have her draw a picture of it. Oh, Armageddon scares you, honey? You're worried about Tommy and Susie next door being ripped off their bikes and swallowed by an earthquake? Well, why don't you just draw a picture of it? It's right there in the article. It's so absurd. You can't believe this is real. You can't believe this. And we can laugh at it as adults. We've got some life experience. Kids, little kids, people. Number 3, here's their advice. Help your child put news reports in perspective. For example, a report of an abduction may make a crime like that seem much more likely to occur than it really is. What? Explain to your children what measures you have taken to keep them safe. Also, keep in mind that a tragedy is usually considered newsworthy because it is rare, not because it is common. End quote. I'm sorry, are these the same guys telling us we're living in the last days that never end and we can see wars, reports of wars, earthquakes, famine, people dying, mass mayhem everywhere? Are these the same guys giving this advice? Tragedy is not that common, guys. Although tragedy is very common because we're in the last days. How can a Jehovah's Witness sit and read this and listen to this drivel? And I would love for them to explain the measures you've taken, the governing body that is, to keep children safe. Can you explain your measures? Like what? Give us some examples. From what may seem relatively mundane, these little kids are ostracized by their peers. And they've heard from the governing body itself that without a baptism, they're nothing more, what was it governing body member Stephen Letts said? They're nothing more than a little enemy of God. And let me tell you, thanks to your movies and showing them disturbing news, they can see exactly what God does to his enemies. They're scaring the hell out of kids. We get another quote from Lourdes. She says, quote, help your children through their emotions. Often emotions follow thoughts. So if we keep our children focused on something positive, they will be able to see clearer skies, end quote. Like what, Lourdes? These children are being brainwashed from the time they are born in this organization that the next big event they're looking forward to isn't a trip to Disneyland, but to a time when Jehovah and the same guys producing the videos come out from the sky and slaughter everyone they know so that they can live in paradise with kangaroos. That's what you're teaching them. The irony. An organization that exposes children to disturbing news and unspeakable dangers, offering advice on how to shield them from disturbing news? They go so far as to print the following message from the October 15th, 1994 Watchtower, page 20, says this, quote, Jesus knows what it is like to be a child in an adult world. He lived with adults, worked with them, experienced being subject to them, and also felt the warm, secure feeling of being loved by them. Children, this same Jesus is your friend. He died for you, and you will live forever if you obey his commands. End quote. Yeah. Unless, of course, as one example, you don't have two witnesses to an adult harming you. Then you'll be dismissed. Unless, of course, you're baptized as a child. Then decide at a later date when you grow up and mature that you're no longer interested in being a Jehovah's Witness. Unless you want to maximize your talents in a career, sport, or hobby. Unless you're gay. Unless you need blood to save your life. Unless you're playing with a wizard toy. Unless all those things, Jesus is your friend otherwise. If you obey what we tell you to do. You see, when you need a filler article for your website, you ignore your long history, a long list of facts showing your organization exposing children to disturbing news every week. If you think they care about children, there are several generations of us that can tell you differently. Never mind the lies, lying about a paradise earth where we never grow old, live with our family forever, hang out with Noah, eat a plant-based diet, and play with panda bears. Never mind putting that in a kid's head, right? It's far more insidious than that. You see, the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses likes to post such articles and point them as proof that they care for children. All the while, just one click away on the same website is the following information for children. From Scriptures for Christian Living, page 44, a Jehovah's Witness kid is exposed to this. The subheading is, How does God view rebellious children? It lists Deuteronomy 21:18 through 21, where it tells kids, the Mosaic law applies the death penalty to a son who grows up to be a stubborn and rebellious drunkard and refuses to be corrected. It goes on to list 2 Kings 2:23 and 24, which says, when a group of kids ridicule the prophet Elisha, grossly despising God's representative, many are devoured by 2 bears. I can't wait for the movies. How about you? I've known a few kids in my lifetime, and well, they're all stubborn and they're all rebellious, this guy included. I wonder what soundstage they'll use as they produce the new movie video to show us the stoning scene for a kid who's stubborn and rebellious. Even as you are protecting your kids from disturbing news via this article, you can always look forward to the governing body's cinematic recreation of a bear ripping apart children for making fun of a bald guy. Regardless, the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses has a really neat article on the website giving you parents advice on how to keep your children from becoming overwhelmed by disturbing news reports. In fact, if your kids are stressed out about the state of the world, just remind them that it's all normal. The end is coming any second now, and they have nothing to fear. Just hand them a Watchtower publication or sit quietly and watch a Watchtower video together. Try, if you can, to ignore that each and every story, each and every talk, each and every teaching, and more Well, they always end the same. It all culminates in a worldwide slaughter, followed by 1,000 years where we can get our act together and see old friends, only for the clock to hit midnight and this same God Jehovah lets out the most evil, scary, vicious, violent, perverted creature to get after us again. He lets them out of prison. One more shot. One more shot at my people in paradise. This is what kids hear in Jehovah's Witnesses. It's their doctrines. These are facts. Nothing disturbing about that, right? Jehovah's Witness parents, please be real with yourself. Your parental gut is speaking to you. Listen to it. Consider the evidence. Pick yourself up a copy that is of the Paradise Lost to Paradise Regained book. Here is one final fact. Even as they post an article telling you to shield your kids from disturbing news, evidence and well over 100 years of history shows that it's highly likely that no one, absolutely no one, has exposed your child to more disturbing news than the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. Thanks for joining me this week. Hug your kids. Wherever you may be well.